Hello, my name is Riley O'Neill, and in this series we're examining my grandfather Don O'Neill's watercolor paintings. In this video we're going to take a look at Arctic Wait.
My grandfather painted Arctic Wait in 2006, towards the very end of his career. This was one of at least two paintings of this composition, the other being more of a sunrise or sunset. It was mostly bright colors. I haven't seen that painting in almost 20 years, so I don't remember it exactly. This one, however, was much more neutral, which I think really gives a feeling of freezing cold and isolation, and just that gritty winter that he would have known as a kid in Buffalo, New York in the 1920s. The boat in the painting was not contemporary to 2006. Once again, I think this was my grandfather channeling some nostalgia when he was growing up in upstate New York. Artists frequently made paintings that made them feel nostalgic for the youth, and my grandfather was no different. We have to remember his youth was the 1920s and early 1930s. I do think that he was inspired by the great Edward Hopper, who in 1926 painted several watercolors in New England featuring boats that look very similar to this one, and it's just kind of a similar vibe. Now I'm going to turn the saturation down so you can see just the value pattern. This is definitely recommended. If your painting's not working right and trying to figure out what's wrong, look at the value pattern. With this one, it's pretty straightforward. The boat is mostly darks and middle values with some hints of light value still preserved in very strategically. And then the surrounding foreground and background is mostly light values. However, there are still hits of middle and darker values as well. So it's kind of a bit of a contrast between the two. The two elements of this painting that we're really going to look at in this video are going to be the boat itself and the surrounding snowscape, because they really do play off each other. First, let's take a close look at the boat. So now that we look closely at the boat, we're going to see the most obvious thing, that this is where the darkest values in the painting are. So the greatest contrast in the painting is going to be the snow up against the darkness of that boat. However, this is where we also see the most saturated colors. My grandfather always mixed colors. He was a big advocate of that. You always mix colors. But anytime you mix two colors, you're going to desaturate them, but how much is up to the artist. So you can really see where he made a very deliberate use of showing violets and these two blues, a warm blue and a cool blue, that you can clearly see in there. So in addition to dark values, there's also more saturated color within the boat. Surrounding the boat is a snow scene, and you can actually break this up into three distinct scenes. One is this foreground, one is the middle ground, which is like the mountains behind the boat, and then one is the sky. First, let's look at the sky. The sky is the most neutral of the three sections I mentioned earlier. The sky was done probably with just one or two mixes and a large brush strokes. But as we look closer, and you can even see this on the original painting, you can actually see the warm and cool pigments when you look up close. But when you stand back, it neutralizes and you end up just getting this big neutral sky. But rest assured, it's the same pigments from the boat, just diluted and mixed. Immediately behind the ship is what appears to be a snowbank or a mountain. Now, first thing you should notice is that this is actually lighter than the sky. The sky is a little darker. And that kind of gives you the feeling this is more closer to you. And the shadows, while they're not particularly dark, they are a little darker, and they're actually warm. These are not cool shadows. He would have made these a little warmer than the shadows elsewhere in the snow scene. Now I'm going to show you the foreground of the snow scene. In this part, we're actually going to see some of the most saturated color in the entire painting. Usually when you think snow scene, you think just pure white or maybe gray. Don didn't do that. He actually put in pure pigment, and he mixed it a bit. Like I say, he always mixes pigments, but you can clearly see where there's the warmer blue and the cooler blue, and you can see where mixed with the warm colors, they actually create like beautiful, nice shadows to kind of grip more form. You can also see a bit of the granulation that watercolor is so well known for. At first glance, this may seem like a very simple painting, but once you really get under the hood and look around, there's actually quite a bit of complexity to it, and I think it comes together fantastically well. Between the varied, yet subtly varied background to the dark, rich boat, this creates a wonderful scene of a boat crashing through the ice at the Arctic Wait.
Thank you very much for watching. I hope you could learn something. If you found that interesting, check out our other videos and visit us online at dononeil.com.